The film begins with Calvin, a successful but troubled novelist, dreaming about a mysterious and alluring female figure. Before he can make sense of the dream, his alarm clock wakes him up. Still affected by the vivid experience, Calvin rises from bed in a dazed state and takes his dog, Scotty, outside for his morning walk. After returning home, he prepares breakfast and carries it to his study, where he attempts to work on his latest writing project. However, despite his efforts, he finds himself trapped in a frustrating bout of writer's block and struggles to produce even a few meaningful words on his typewriter. Later that day, Calvin receives a call from his brother, Harry, who invites him to join him at the gym. Hoping that a change of scenery might help clear his mind, Calvin agrees. During their workout, Harry begins questioning him about his love life and past relationships. The conversation quickly becomes uncomfortable, as Calvin admits that he finds dating difficult. He believes that many women are interested only in the image they formed of him after reading his novels in high school, rather than who he truly is as a person. As part of his routine, Calvin also attends a therapy session with Dr. Rosenthal. During the appointment, he opens up about his inability to write and the growing frustration it causes him. At one point, he asks for Bobby, a stuffed toy that Rosenthal reserves exclusively for him. Throughout their conversation, it becomes clear that Rosenthal is trying to encourage Calvin to engage more with the world, build friendships, and lead a healthier social life. Calvin, however, remains withdrawn and resistant to change. Seeing little progress, Rosenthal gives him a simple writing assignment and asks him to document any social interaction he experiences. Not long afterward, Calvin reluctantly appears as a guest on a stand-up comedian's television show. Although he has little interest in public appearances, he fulfills the obligation anyway. The experience proves exhausting as he is forced to interact with fans, colleagues, and industry professionals throughout the event. Overwhelmed by the constant attention, he eventually walks away from the crowd and encounters his publisher, Cyrus. Frustrated that he was not informed in advance about the appearance, Calvin speaks to him rather harshly. Despite his irritation, he spends a long period signing books for fans before finally returning home. When he arrives, he discovers that Scotty has completely wrecked the house and urinated in several places. Already drained from the day's events, Calvin lacks the energy to deal with the mess and simply collapses onto the couch, where he falls asleep. That night, he once again dreams of the mysterious woman. This time, the encounter feels more vivid and personal. The woman approaches him in a forest and engages him in a lengthy conversation about Scotty. Upon learning that Calvin named the dog after a famous novelist, she jokingly suggests that he may have an inferiority complex and secretly wishes he could keep other writers under his control. Before leaving, she hands him a sketch she has drawn of Scotty and remarks that she likes him exactly as he is. When Calvin awakens, he feels an overwhelming surge of inspiration. He rushes to his typewriter and begins pouring his thoughts onto the page. Completely consumed by creativity, he loses track of time and spends several days immersed in his work. During a later session with Rosenthal, he hesitantly discusses a new character he has created, inspired directly by the woman from his dreams. He reveals that her name is Ruby Sparks, that she is 26 years old, originally from Dayton, Ohio, and possesses a rich personal history along with a carefully developed personality. As the days pass, strange occurrences begin taking place around Calvin's home. He starts finding various feminine products scattered throughout the house, while Harry and Harry's wife, Susie, are visiting. Assuming the items belong to Susie, he initially ignores them. However, when Harry discovers a bra lodged between the couch cushions and demands an explanation, the situation becomes increasingly awkward. Susie and Harry soon catch Calvin secretly storing the bra alongside several other feminine items he has collected over time. Alarmed by the discovery, Susie insists that he throw everything away immediately before she is forced to involve their mother. After his brother and sister-in-law leave, Calvin returns to his writing and composes a scene featuring himself and Ruby by a swimming pool. Later that night, he falls asleep at his desk while thinking about her. The following morning, he is awakened by a phone call from his publisher, who reminds him about an important meeting he must attend. As Calvin rushes to take Scotty outside, he suddenly hears a woman's voice offering to walk the dog instead. Confused, He turns around and is stunned to discover Ruby Sparks standing in his kitchen. Even more shocking, she behaves as though she has always been part of his life and casually refers to herself as his girlfriend. Ruby attempts to interact with him normally and even offers him a bite of her cereal, but the sight of her sends Calvin into a panic. Terrified, he collapses to the floor before retreating to his study and desperately calling Dr. Rosenthal. When the call goes to voicemail, he leaves an urgent message pleading for help. Unable to process what is happening, Calvin convinces himself that Ruby must be a hallucination. Yet when he cautiously returns downstairs, he finds her calmly preparing breakfast. Ruby becomes upset by his strange behavior and cannot understand why he is acting so distant and frightened. In desperation, Calvin contacts Harry, but because his brother is occupied with a meeting, he receives little useful assistance. Determined to escape the situation, Calvin leaves the house, but Ruby insists on accompanying him. He eventually takes her to a nearby shopping district filled with restaurants and stores. Hoping for a moment alone, he asks her to give him some space and then meets with Mabel, an overly enthusiastic fan whose phone number he obtained at the earlier event. During their conversation, Ruby unexpectedly approaches and assumes Calvin is being unfaithful. Calvin tries to continue speaking with Mabel while carefully avoiding Ruby, still clinging to the belief that she is not real. The situation changes dramatically when Mabel responds directly to Ruby. For the first time, Calvin realizes that someone else can see and hear her. Desperate for confirmation, he grabs a waiter and demands to know whether he can see Ruby as well. When the waiter answers yes, Calvin finally understands that he is not losing his mind. Overwhelmed by the realization, he begins touching Ruby's face and hair as if trying to confirm that she truly exists. Furious and hurt by Calvin's behavior, Ruby throws a glass of water in his face before storming away. Calvin immediately chases after her and forcefully attempts to stop her from leaving. Concerned by the scene, a nearby man approaches to help Ruby, but she reassures him that she is safe and sends him away. Desperate to keep her from leaving, Calvin impulsively lifts her onto his shoulders and carries her off. The tension between them eventually gives way to an emotional confrontation, during which they express their feelings and share a passionate kiss. The argument comes to an end, and the two reconcile. Over the following weeks, Calvin and Ruby enjoy what appears to be a perfect relationship. They spend nearly all their time together and experience a period of genuine happiness. Eventually, Calvin decides to tell Harry the truth about Ruby. Naturally, Harry becomes deeply concerned for his brother's mental health and initially assumes that Calvin has lost touch with reality. However, Calvin excitedly insists that Ruby is real and that other people can see and interact with her as well. He explains how she has helped him become more social, spend time outdoors, and enjoy life in ways he never had before. Still skeptical, Harry agrees to visit Calvin's house. His disbelief vanishes the moment Ruby unexpectedly appears and enthusiastically greets him. Shocked by what he sees, Harry drags Calvin outside and demands an explanation. Unable to accept the impossible, he concludes that Ruby must be a stalker or some kind of intruder. Determined to test Calvin's unbelievable claim, Harry suggests a simple experiment. If Ruby truly emerged from Calvin's manuscript, then any new changes written into her character should immediately affect her in real life. Intrigued by the idea, Calvin returns to his study and writes that Ruby can speak fluent French. When the two men come downstairs, they are stunned to hear Ruby effortlessly conversing in French as though she had spoken it her entire life. Realizing the frightening implications of his power, Calvin quickly returns to his typewriter and removes the change. After the bizarre evening finally comes to an end, Harry leaves, promising that he will keep Ruby's existence a secret. Several months later, Calvin takes Ruby to meet his mother and her partner, Mort. Unfortunately, Calvin still harbors resentment toward Mort, and the unresolved tension between them ruins what should have been an enjoyable visit. Ruby witnesses firsthand how Calvin's stubbornness and emotional baggage affect the people around him. As time passes, cracks begin to appear in their seemingly perfect relationship. Ruby gradually grows unhappy under Calvin's increasingly controlling behavior. She openly confronts him about his possessive nature and his need to dictate every aspect of their relationship, but her concerns fall on deaf ears. Wanting more independence, Ruby enrolls in an art class and decides to spend one night each week at her own apartment. Rather than supporting her growth, Calvin becomes threatened by her desire for personal space. Unable to cope with Ruby's independence, Calvin secretly returns to his manuscript and rewrites parts of her personality. He alters her character to become clingy, needy, and completely dependent on him. The changes immediately take effect in reality. Ruby becomes excessively affectionate and refuses to leave his side. Even a minor incident, such as Calvin letting go of her hand while crossing a street, causes her tremendous emotional distress. She spends days crying over the event, prompting Calvin to intervene once again. This time, he rewrites Ruby as an endlessly happy person. The alteration has an equally disturbing effect. Ruby becomes unnaturally cheerful regardless of the circumstances, unable to express genuine sadness, frustration, or disappointment. Disturbed by what he has done, Calvin seeks advice from Harry, who urges him to restore Ruby's true personality. Following his brother's guidance, Calvin removes the artificial changes and allows Ruby's flaws, emotions, and individuality to return. With Ruby restored to her authentic self, the relationship once again becomes complicated. Their disagreements return, but so does the sincerity that had previously made their connection meaningful. Hoping to improve things between them, Calvin takes Ruby to a party hosted by Langdon Tharp. At the gathering, Calvin unexpectedly encounters his former girlfriend, Lila. Their conversation begins politely as they discuss Lila's recently published book. However, the discussion soon turns personal and old wounds resurface. Lila criticizes Calvin for the very same flaws Ruby has been struggling with. She accuses him of being self-centered, controlling, and incapable of treating the people in his life as equals. Meanwhile, Ruby enjoys herself at the party and spends time talking with other guests. Langdon begins flirting with her near the swimming pool and eventually convinces her to strip down and jump into the water. Witnessing this interaction fills Calvin with jealousy and rage. He immediately pulls Ruby away from the party and takes her home. Once there, the argument between them escalates dramatically. Calvin lashes out, driven by insecurity and possessiveness, while Ruby finally stands her ground. She accuses him of constantly belittling her and manipulating her life for his own comfort and control. For the first time, Ruby reaches her limit and decides to leave him. In a desperate attempt to stop her, Calvin finally reveals the truth. He tells Ruby that she is not an ordinary woman, but a character he created in his manuscript. At first, the revelation sounds absurd, but Calvin proves it by returning to his typewriter and rewriting her actions. As he types, Ruby is forced to obey his commands against her will. Calvin repeatedly changes her behavior, making her perform humiliating acts and stripping away her autonomy. With every sentence he writes, Ruby loses more control over herself. The horrifying demonstration continues until Calvin finally understands the full extent of what he has been doing. Ruby is left emotionally shattered and physically exhausted, while Calvin breaks down in guilt and despair. When he attempts to approach her, she retreats into his room and locks the door behind her, unable to process the devastating truth. Realizing that his love has become a form of imprisonment, Calvin makes one final decision. He sits at his typewriter and writes Ruby's freedom into existence. He leaves the completed manuscript outside the door along with a note explaining that she should read the final page. In the note, he also confesses that he loves her. The following morning, Calvin discovers that Ruby is gone. Unable to cope with the loss, he collapses from shock and grief. Hours later, Harry finds him and helps him recover. Seeing his brother's condition, Harry encourages him to finish Ruby's story so that he can finally find closure. Though reluctant, Calvin eventually completes the manuscript and publishes it under the title The Girlfriend. The novel becomes an enormous success and quickly captures public attention. As his life begins to heal, Calvin reconciles with both his mother and Mort. Surrounded by family, he celebrates the success of his new book and gradually learns to move forward. One afternoon, while walking Scotty through a park, Calvin notices a familiar face sitting alone and reading a book. To his astonishment, it is Ruby. However, she is no longer the woman he once knew. She now exists as her own person, completely independent and free from his influence. Through Scotty, Calvin finds an opportunity to speak with her. During their conversation, it becomes clear that Ruby has no memory of him or their shared past. Rather than dwelling on what was lost, Calvin introduces himself as the author of the book she is reading. After finishing part of the novel, Ruby remarks that the man in the story deserves another chance. The two sit together on the grass while Scotty rests beside them. As they continue talking, Ruby playfully asks Calvin not to reveal how the story ends. Smiling softly, he promises that he will not. The moment suggests that, although their previous relationship has vanished, a new beginning may be waiting for them. With that hopeful possibility lingering in the air, the film comes to an end.